Hey there. Tonight we're traveling back 3,200 years to the year 1177 BCE. You're standing in Hattusa, the capital of the Hittite Empire, one of the most powerful civilizations the world has ever seen. But here's the thing, nobody tells you about ancient superpowers. They don't always fall with a bang. Sometimes they just stop. The Hittite Empire collapsed so suddenly that nobody wrote it down. No epic final battle. No dramatic last stand, just silence. One day, scribes were recording grain shipments and trade deals. The next, nothing. Empty tablets, abandoned cities, an entire civilization erased from history like morning mist. You are Zidanza, a veteran palace guard in your 43rd year. You've served 3 kings. You've fought in Syria, guarded caravans through the Taurus Mountains, and survived more battles than you care to remember. Your knees ache when it rains. Your sword arm bears 19 scars. You know every crack in the stone walls of the royal palace. But tonight, as you stand watch under stars that have witnessed empires rise and fall for millennia, you don't know that your world is ending. That's the strangest part about apocalypses. They rarely announce themselves. They just quietly unravel everything you've ever known. So dim the lights, settle in, and let me walk you through the final ordinary days of an extraordinary empire. Comment below where you're watching from, what time it is for you right now, and remember, you're safe. This already happened, you're just visiting. You wake before dawn in the guards' barracks, same as you have for 23 years. The stone is cold against your back, your sleeping mat smells of old sweat, and the dried herbs your daughter picked last summer. Outside, you hear the city stirring, bakers firing their ovens, water carriers trudging toward the cisterns, the endless shuffle of a city that never truly sleeps. Your joints protest as you stand. 43 is old for a soldier. Most men your age are dead or crippled. But you're still here, still useful, still drawing your monthly ration of grain and oil. The younger guards respect you, fear you a little. You've killed men in 7 different kingdoms. They can see it in how you move. You dress slowly, methodically, leather kilt, worn smooth by decades of use. Bronze scale armor that cost you 3 months' wages 30 years ago. The metal is dull now, dented in places but still sound, still protective. You've maintained it like a living thing because it's kept you alive when silk and gold could not. The sword comes last. 3 feet of bronze, resharpened so many times the blade is thinner than when it was forged. The grip fits your hand like a lover's palm. You've named it Widowmaker, though you've never told anyone that. Men who name their weapons are either poets or madmen, and you're neither. In the courtyard, morning formations are assembling. 200 guards, give or take. Half of them are seasoned. The other half are boys playing at war. Their armor still shiny. Their eyes still bright with stupid dreams of glory. The captain of the guard is a man named Muatali, no relation to the great king of that name who died before you were born. This Muatali is 35, ambitious, and soft. He earned his position through marriage to a minor priestess's daughter, not through blood on foreign soil. He walks the formations with his chest puffed out, inspecting armor that doesn't need inspecting, criticizing sword grips that have defended this city longer than he's been alive. You stand perfectly still as he passes. You've learned that stillness is sometimes the greatest act of defiance. Zidanza, he says, stopping before you. Your armor looks like you pulled it from a midden heap. It looks like it's kept me alive through 19 campaigns, sir, you reply, voice flat as hammered bronze. His jaw tightens. He wants to punish you for insolence but can't. You're popular with the men. Respected. If he pushes too hard, they'll grumble. Grumbling guards make poor defenders. So instead, he moves on, finding easier targets among the younger soldiers who haven't yet learned that regulations are for men who've never had to choose between following orders and staying alive. The morning briefing is routine. Watch rotations, gate schedules. A reminder that merchants from Cyprus are expected next week with copper shipments. Everything normal, everything ordered, everything exactly as it has been for generations. Except, There's something Captain Muatali doesn't mention. Something you heard 2 nights ago when you were posted outside the throne room. The king received messengers from the coastal cities. You couldn't hear words, but you heard tone, fear, urgency, something about ships, something about cities burning. Your first watch is the Eastern Gate, the Sphinx Gate, though the sphinxes are so worn by wind and time that they look more like lumpy dogs. You stand in the shadow of the left statue, watching the road that winds down from the city into the valley below. Traffic is normal, farmers bringing vegetables, a merchant with donkeys loaded with pottery, 3 priestesses in white robes heading toward a shrine beyond the walls, an old woman with a basket of bread balanced on her head, moving with that particular grace that comes from carrying things since childhood. You've stood this post 10,000 times. You could do it in your sleep. In fact, sometimes you wonder if you are doing it in your sleep, if your body has simply memorized the movements so completely that your mind can wander while your eyes watch. The sun climbs. The stone beneath your feet grows warm. Sweat trickles down your spine under the armor. You don't move. Motion wastes energy. Energy is life. You learned that in Syria, standing watch under a sun that could kill you as surely as any arrow. A young guard, Talmi, barely 20, shifts his weight from foot to foot. He's been on duty for 2 hours and already looks exhausted. Youth. They have energy but no endurance. They burn hot and fast like kindling. How do you do it? He asks finally. Stand so still for so long. I think about nothing. You tell him, nothing, nothing. Empty the mind like emptying a cup. Let thoughts flow through without catching on anything. He tries. You can see him trying. His face goes through a dozen expressions in as many seconds. Concentration, frustration, boredom. He'll learn. Or he won't. Most don't. Midday brings the heat. The kind of heat that makes thoughts slow and thick like honey. You're relieved by another guard and make your way to the mess hall. A long stone building with narrow windows that catch whatever breeze might exist. The food is the same as always. Barley porridge, onions, sometimes cheese if the quartermaster is feeling generous. Today there's cheese, but it's old and tastes like feet. You eat it anyway. You've eaten worse, much worse. You sit with other veterans, men whose faces you know better than your own families. Hani, who lost 3 fingers to a Kaskanax and now can't hold a spear properly but supervises the armory. Puduheba, who survived an arrow through the lung and now wheezes when he laughs. Kamrusepa, who's been with you since you were both young and stupid in the Egyptian campaigns. The conversation is what it always is. Complaints about the food, jokes about the captain, speculation about which merchant's daughters might be available for the right price. The comfortable, meaningless talk of men who've survived things that would break most people. But today, Kamrusepa leans in close. You hear about the coastal cities. What about them? You ask, keeping your voice neutral. My cousin's a scribe, works in the palace. He says letters are coming in. Bad news. Cities going dark. No trade ships arriving. No messages. Just silence. Probably pirates. Hani says, waving his 3-fingered hand dismissively. Always pirates bothering the coast. But Kamrusepa shakes his head. Not like this. Whole cities. Gone. You remember the messengers. The fear in their voices. Gone how? You ask. Just gone. No details. That's what's strange. Usually there are survivors. Stories. Something. This time, nothing. Afternoon watch is the palace inner courtyard. A prestigious posting that means standing very still while very important people ignore you completely. You're stationed near the throne room entrance, close enough to hear conversations but far enough that you're supposed to pretend you don't. Today, though, the doors are closed. This is unusual. The king likes audiences, likes being seen dispensing justice, receiving tribute, demonstrating power. Closed doors mean secrets. Secrets usually mean problems. You can hear voices inside, raised voices, not quite shouting, but close. The thick cedar doors muffle words, but emotion carries through. Alarm, disagreement, Fear, maybe. It's hard to tell. A scribe emerges, young and pale, clutching a tablet like it might escape. He hurries past without acknowledging you. In his wake, you catch a fragment of sentence from inside. Cannot defend every city if they're all. Then the doors close again. You stand, you watch, you think. Cannot defend every city. That's what the voice said. Why would they need to defend cities? The empire is at peace. Has been for years. The coastal pirates Hani mentioned. They're annoying, not dangerous. Egypt is weak, torn by internal problems. The Assyrians are distant and distracted. So what cities? What threat? An hour passes. 2. The sun creeps across the courtyard, and you creep with it, following the shadow that keeps you from roasting in your armor. Your knees ache, your back aches, everything aches, but you don't move except when the shadow moves. Finally, the doors open. The king emerges. Sepalulium III, a man you've guarded for 7 years. He looks old today, old and tired. His crown seems to weigh heavily. He doesn't look at you. Kings never do. Your furniture, useful furniture, but furniture nonetheless. Evening brings relief from heat, but no relief from thinking. You're off duty now, free to return to your small house in the lower city. 4 rooms that you share with your wife, your daughter's husband, and their 3 children. It's crowded, but you've slept in worse places. At least nobody is trying to kill you in your sleep. Your wife, Tawalia, is grinding grain when you arrive. She's 50, which means she's ancient by most measures, but she's stubborn and healthy and stronger than many men, half her age. Her hands never stop moving, grinding, spinning, weaving, cooking. Motion is life for her, just as stillness is life for you. You look worried, she says without looking up from the grinding stone. I'm not worried. You're always worried. You've been worried since I met you 30 years ago, but tonight you're worried, differently. This is why you've stayed married. She sees things, understands things. Most wives would nag, complain about the long hours, the danger, the modest pay. Tawalia just watches with those dark eyes that miss nothing and says what she sees. There's something happening, you admit. I don't know what. Maybe nothing, maybe everything. She nods, still grinding. The baker's wife told me ships stopped coming from Cyprus. 3 weeks now, no trade, no news. Pirates, you say, repeating Hani's theory, without conviction. Maybe. She doesn't sound convinced either. The children need to eat. Can you fetch water? So you fetch water, because water needs fetching, and your granddaughter needs a drink, and the world might be ending, but evening tasks still require completion. The cistern is crowded with women, balancing clay jars on their heads, gossiping in low voices. They fall silent when they see you. A soldier, a man, an intrusion into their domain. Night. Sleep should come but doesn't. You lie on your sleeping mat listening to the sounds of your crowded house, your grandson's wheezing breath, your son-in-law's snoring, your daughter murmuring something in her sleep. All the sounds of life continuing, as it always has. But your mind won't stop. It keeps turning over fragments. Closed doors, raised voices, coastal cities gone silent. No ships from Cyprus. 3 weeks. Cannot defend every city. You've seen empires fall, not Hittite empires. This one has stood for 500 years, as permanent as the mountains. But you've fought in Syria, and you've seen cities that thought themselves eternal burn to ash in a single night. You've walked through streets where children played that morning, and saw only corpses by evening. Nothing lasts forever. You know this, but knowing it doesn't make you believe it can happen here. To this city, this empire, this life you've built over 4 decades of service. Tawalia shifts beside you. You're thinking too loud, she whispers. Sorry, tell me. So you do. You tell her everything. The messengers, the closed doors, the fragment of conversation, your friend's cousin's warning about cities going dark. She listens without interrupting, which is one of her gifts, the ability to simply receive information without immediately trying to solve or dismiss it. When you finish, she's quiet for a long moment. Then if something is coming, What would you have us do? I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe I'm seeing patterns where there are none. Maybe I'm just old and scared. You've never been scared before, she says. That's what worries me. You have no answer to that. So you lie in the darkness, listening to your family breathe, and wonder when safety stopped feeling safe. Morning again. The third day, though it feels like you've been standing watch forever. Time has a way of compressing and expanding when nothing and everything happens simultaneously. Today you're assigned to the western gate with Poduheba, the man who wheezes when he laughs. He's not laughing this morning. Instead, he's staring down the road toward the Aegean, toward the distant coast you can't see from here, but know is there, somewhere beyond the mountains. Refugee came in last night, he says, after your watch ended. Gate guards almost didn't let him through. Why not? Said he was from Milawata, claimed the city was gone, destroyed, said ships came from the sea, thousands of them. Milawata, you've been there. A prosperous coastal city, well defended, strong walls, good harbor, not easily destroyed. What kind of ships? That's the thing. He didn't know. Said they weren't Hittite, weren't Egyptian, weren't anyone he recognized. Said they just came and burned everything. One man, you say, probably a drunk or a madman. Cities don't just disappear, but even as you say it, you remember Syria, remember cities that did disappear. Remember walking through Kadesh after the battle, and seeing nothing but scorched earth where markets had stood. Cities are more fragile than people think. The morning passes, no more refugees, no more news, just normal traffic, farmers, merchants, priests, the usual flow of a functioning city. But you find yourself watching faces now, looking for fear, for knowledge, for any sign that others sense what you sense. Most don't. They're doing what they've always done, believing what they've always believed, that tomorrow will be like today, that the empire is eternal, that the walls will hold forever. You remember believing that once when you were young. The palace is strange today. You notice it during afternoon rounds, a quality to the silence that feels different from normal quiet. Scribes hurry with tablets but don't chat. Priests move through corridors without their usual self-important swagger. Servants keep their eyes down more than usual. Something has shifted. Everyone feels it. Nobody names it. You're posted outside the archive room, a boring assignment usually, watching scholars shuffle dusty tablets. But today, you watch 3 generals arrive, then 5 more, then administrators you recognize from treasury meetings. They disappear into a chamber you've never been inside, and they don't emerge for hours. You stand, you wait, you listen. A younger guard, one you don't know well, approaches. Zidanza, captain wants you. This is unusual. Captains don't typically want specific guards mid-shift. You follow the young man through corridors you've walked 10,000 times, noting new details suddenly, how the stone is wearing smooth in certain places, how the paint on older frescoes is fading, how everything here is old and getting older. Captain Muwatali is in his quarters pacing. He sees you and stops. For a moment he seems uncertain, a strange look on a man who makes his living from certainty. Close the door, he says. You do. I'm promoting you to gate commander, Western Gate, double watch. Starting tomorrow. Sir, don't ask questions, just accept. You'll receive double pay. You'll command 20 men. Make sure they're ready. Ready for what, sir? He looks at you then, really looks, and you see something you've never seen in his eyes before. Fear. Just make sure they're ready, he says quietly. That's an order. You tell Tawalia about the promotion. She doesn't smile or congratulate you. She understands what you understand. This isn't advancement, it's preparation. They're putting experienced men in key positions. They're doubling watches. They're getting ready. For what? Nobody will say. But you've spent 30 years reading the language of military preparation, and this dialect is one you know. Expect attack. Expect it soon. Expect it to be bad. How much time? She asks. I don't know. Maybe nothing comes. Maybe it's just precaution. She begins moving through the house, touching things. Her wedding gift from her mother, a small bronze mirror, the clay figurine your daughter made as a child, the good loom she's used for 20 years. You realize she's taking inventory, deciding what matters, what could be carried if carrying became necessary. Don't, you say. We're not there yet. Where are we then? You have no answer. You're in the space between normal and catastrophe, between safety and survival. It's a space you've occupied before, in foreign cities, far from home. You never expected to occupy it here, in your own capital, in the heart of an empire that stood 500 years. Your grandson, 4 years old, toddles over and grabs your leg. Grandfather play, he asks in that simple way children have of reducing everything to immediate needs. You pick him up. He's heavy, solid, real. He smells like bread and dirt and child sweat. He has no idea that anything might be wrong. To him, the world is still safe. You hope, gods, how you hope, that it stays that way. Day 4. Your first day as gate commander. 20 men under your command, half of them experienced, half barely old enough to shave. You spend the morning inspecting them, checking their equipment, testing their readiness. Most fail. Their swords are dull, their armor poorly maintained, their stances sloppy. These aren't soldiers, they're palace decorations who've never expected to actually fight. You spend 3 hours on basic drills, how to stand for long watches without exhausting yourself, how to properly grip a sword so it doesn't fly from your hand on first impact, how to move in formation without tripping over your own feet.
I hate you by noon.
Good. Hate is better than complacency. Pudaheba approaches during the midday break.
You hear? He asks.
Hear what? 2 more refugees came in last night. Different gate, said their city was destroyed 3 days ago. That's 2 cities in 5 days. Which cities? Didn't recognize the names. Somewhere south, small places, but still, could be bandits. Local troubles. Doesn't mean 3 ships were spotted off the coast yesterday, he interrupts. Foreign ships. Nobody recognized the design. They didn't land, just sailed past, like they were scouting. The pieces are assembling. You don't want them to, but they are. Cities destroyed, ships scouting, preparations, fear in the captain's eyes. It adds up to something you don't want to calculate. Keep your men ready, you tell Pudaheba. Keep them sharp. You think it's coming here. I think nowhere is safe. Not anymore. He nods slowly. My daughter, I'm sending her to my brother's farm, inland, away from the cities, just in case. Good, you say. That's good. But you're thinking, where is far enough? If the empire falls, where is safe? Evening watch. The sun setting behind the mountains turns them into black silhouettes against gold sky. Beautiful. You've always found sunsets beautiful, even here at the edge of everything, even now with your mind churning with numbers, ships, refugees, days, distances. A merchant arrives at the gate. You recognize him. Arnuwanda, a copper trader who makes the Cyprus run twice a year. His donkeys look thin. He looks thinner. No copper this season. You ask as you check his documents. No ships, he says. Cyprus has stopped trading. No explanation. Just stopped. 3 of my contracts are ruined. 3. Why did they stop? He shakes his head. Nobody knows. Or if they know, they're not saying. I heard. He lowers his voice. I heard Cyprus was attacked. I heard the cities there are burning. I heard the king is dead. But I heard all that third hand from a sailor who heard it from someone else. So who knows what's true? You wave him through. Good luck with your contracts. Luck. He laughs bitterly. What's luck worth when the world's ending? He moves on, and you think about that phrase, the world's ending. It's hyperbole, of course. The world doesn't end. It just changes. Sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, but always changing. Empires rise and fall. Cities burn and rebuild. Life continues, except sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes cities burn and nobody rebuilds them. Sometimes empires fall and nothing rises to replace them. You've seen the ruins in Syria, cities that were old when the Hittites were young, now just empty stones and ghosts. Could Hattusa become ruins? Could this gate where you stand become rubble? Could your grandsons play in the broken streets of a dead empire? The thought is obscene, impossible, and yet, night brings an emergency assembly. All gate commanders, all watch captains, anyone with authority over armed men. You stand in the great hall with 50 others, waiting for someone to explain why you've been pulled from your posts. The king enters. Sapiliuima III, who looked old 3 days ago, now looks ancient. His crown still weighs heavily. His robes, though rich, hang on him like burial clothes. There's no gentle way to say this, he begins. The empire is under attack. Silence. Complete, absolute silence. Multiple coastal cities have fallen. Alossia, which you know as Cyprus, has been destroyed. The Luca lands are under assault. We've lost contact with 20 cities in the past 10 days. 20, gone silent. Someone asks the question everyone's thinking. Who's attacking us? The king's face is grim. We don't know. The reports are confused. Some say Mycenaeans. Some say Libyans. Some say people from the sea we've never encountered. Ships without banners. Armies without kings. They attack. They destroy. They move on. They don't occupy. They don't negotiate. They just erase. Your blood runs cold. You've fought many enemies. You understand conquest. One kingdom wanting another's land, resources, power. But this, destruction without purpose, that's something else. Something darker. Hattusa is secure, the king continues. Our walls are strong. We have supplies for months. We have you, our finest warriors. We will not fall. The words are meant to reassure. They do not. You hear what he's not saying. Everywhere else is falling. We're next. We're all that's left. Double watches as you've been ordered. Shore up defenses. Prepare for siege. That is all. But it's not all. It's everything. It's the end of the world as you've known it, wrapped in a 2-minute speech and sent you back to your posts. You don't go home. You return to the gate, because that's your post now, because leaving would be desertion, because there's nothing you can tell your family that would make this better. What would you say? The empire is falling, but don't worry. 20 cities are gone, but we'll be fine. Unknown enemies are destroying everything, but try to sleep. Instead, you stand watch. You check your men's readiness. You sharpen your sword, even though it doesn't need sharpening. The motion is calming. Bronze against stone. Scrape, scrape, scrape. A rhythm older than empires. Ptolemy, the young guard, approaches. Commander, is it true, what they're saying? What are they saying? That the Egyptians are coming, that the sea peoples are coming, that everyone is coming, and we're all going to die. Sea peoples, you've heard that term whispered. A name for the nameless, the enemy without face or banner, or reason. We're not all going to die. You tell him, though you're not sure you believe it, but some of us will. You look at him, 20 years old, scared, still soft around the edges in ways war hasn't yet hardened. He reminds you of yourself at that age, before Syria, before you learned that death is common, and survival is luck. Maybe you admit, probably, but maybe not today. So today, we stand watch. Tomorrow we'll worry about tomorrow. That's it. That's your wisdom. That's all the wisdom there is. Everything else is just noise. He nods, not understanding, but accepting. You remember being young enough to think wisdom was more complicated than one day at a time. You remember believing there were answers beyond survive this moment, then survive the next. Dawn of day 5. Or is it 6? Time blurs when you don't sleep. You've been awake for 30 hours, drinking watered wine to stay alert, eating bread that tastes like sand. Your eyes burn, your body aches. But the gate needs watching. More refugees arrive. A family this time, father, mother, 3 children. The youngest is maybe 2, crying weakly in her mother's arms. They have nothing but the clothes they wear, and a donkey so tired it can barely stand. Where from? You ask as you check them. Tarhuntasa, the father says. His voice is hollow. The southern capital. It's gone. Your hand stops. Tarhuntasa. Not some minor coastal city. Not some distant outpost. Tarhuntasa. the empire's second city, heavily fortified, strongly garrisoned. Gone how? They came from the sea. Thousands, maybe tens of thousands. We couldn't, the walls held for 3 days. Then they didn't.
I got my family out.
Most didn't. How long ago? 8 days. We've been walking, hiding. The roads aren't safe. Nothing's safe. You wave them through. They shuffle into the city, joining hundreds of other refugees who've arrived in recent days. The city is swelling with frightened people, and swelling means strain on food, on water, on order. You've seen what happens when too many scared people crowd together. It rarely ends well, but that's not your problem. Your problem is the gate. Your problem is watching the road. Your problem is standing here until someone relieves you. And right now, nobody's relieving anyone because there aren't enough guards. The sun climbs. The road stays empty. Nothing comes. Nothing comes. Nothing comes. Somehow, that's worse than if something did. Someone finally relieves you at midday. Not because you're scheduled for relief. Schedules stopped mattering 2 days ago, but because Puduheba notices you swaying on your feet and physically drags you away from the gate. You're no good dead, he says, pushing you toward the barracks. Sleep 4 hours, then come back. You try to protest. He ignores you. You try to pull rank. He reminds you that he saved your life in Syria, and you owe him. And anyway, he's bigger than you. So you stumble to the barracks and collapse on the first empty mat. Sleep comes like drowning, deep and dark and absolute. You dream of Syria, of the battle at Kadesh, where you earned your first scar, of standing in shield walls while arrows fell like deadly rain, of the sound bronze makes when it cuts flesh, a wet tearing sound that never leaves your memory. But in the dream, you're not fighting Egyptians. You're fighting shadows, enemies without faces. They keep coming, wave after wave, and your sword passes through them like smoke. You can't hurt them, can't stop them, can't do anything but swing uselessly while they advance. You wake with a shout, sword half drawn, before you remember where you are. The barracks, Hattusa, safe, for now. Except it's not 4 hours later, it's barely 1, and Puduheba is shaking you awake with a look on his face you've seen before, right before bad things happen. They're here, he says. Ships were spotted on the horizon. Scouts report an army moving north toward us. You need to see this. You're on your feet before he finishes speaking, grabbing your armor, your mind still fogged with sleep and nightmares but your body moving on instinct. The battle is coming. After all the waiting, all the watching, all the fear, it's here. You climb to the western wall following Puduheba. Other guards are already there, staring outward. You push through to the parapet and look. The plain beyond the city stretches to the horizon. Normally it's empty, except for farmers and their fields. Today, it's not empty. Ships, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, pulled up on distant beaches you can barely see. And between the ships and the city, moving slowly but steadily north, an army. No, not an army. Armies have order, formations, banners. This is something else. A mass of humanity, weapons glinting in afternoon sun, stretching across the landscape, like locusts. You've seen large armies before. The Egyptian force at Kadesh was 60,000 men. This looks bigger, much bigger. Gods. Someone whispers beside you. The word is prayer and curse simultaneously. How many? Asks another guard. You squint, trying to count, trying to estimate. It's impossible. Too many, too spread out. But you've done this before. Estimated enemy forces from defensive positions. You do the math. The terrible math. 100,000, you say quietly. Maybe more. Silence. Nobody wants to believe it. Hattusa has 10,000 fighting men. Maybe 12, if you arm every male. Over 15. 10,000 against 100,000. Those aren't battle odds. That's not a fight. That's an execution. They're not moving fast, Puduheba observes. Look, they're not marching. They're migrating. Women, children, wagons. He's right. Between the warriors you see families, carts loaded with possessions, This isn't just an invading army. This is a people on the move, bringing everything they own, pushing everything in their path aside. Where did they come from? Where are they going? Why? The questions don't matter. What matters is they're coming here, and you're in their way. The king summons all commanders again. You go, leaving your post, because orders are orders, even when orders seem pointless. The strategy meeting is brief. There is no strategy. You cannot defend against 100,000 with 10,000. You cannot win this battle. Everyone knows it. Nobody says it directly, but it hangs in the air like smoke. We send envoys, someone suggests. Negotiate. Find out what they want. They've destroyed 20 cities, the king responds. They don't negotiate. They don't want tribute. They want nothing, everything. I don't know. We abandon the city, another commander says. Take what we can carry. Retreat into the mountains. Rebuild elsewhere. Abandon 500 years of history. Abandon our capital, our temples, our dead empire. The speaker is Muatali, your captain, and his voice is sharp. It's dead. We just haven't stopped breathing yet. The king looks at him. For a moment you think he'll order Muatali executed for defeatism. Instead he just nods slowly. Perhaps you're right. The admission breaks something. If the king accepts defeat, what hope is there? Some of us stay, you hear yourself saying. Hold the walls. Buy time for others to escape. Everyone looks at you. You're not sure why you spoke. It's not your place. You're a gate commander, not a general. But the words came anyway. How much time? The king asks. A day, maybe 2, maybe more if we're lucky. But enough for women, children, the elderly to get away. Enough for the treasury to be moved. Enough for something to survive. And the men who stay, you meet his eyes. We die, but we die buying something worth having a tomorrow. The room is silent. Then slowly, other commanders nod. Not all of them, but enough. Enough to make it possible. You have 12 hours. 12 hours to prepare the city for evacuation. 12 hours to prepare 500 men to die, so 10,000 can live. 12 hours to say goodbye to everything. You don't go home immediately. First you organize. You select which guards stay, which go. The oldest stay, men like you who've lived full lives. The youngest go, boys who haven't yet learned what dying feels like. The families go. The craftsmen go. Anyone who can rebuild elsewhere, who can carry the Hittite name forward, who can keep something alive, they go. You're assembling those who stay when Kamrusepa finds you. Your friend, since Egypt. Your brother in everything but blood. I'm staying, he says simply. You have grandchildren. I should die with my friend. That's what I should do. Don't argue. You don't. You grasp his forearm in the old gesture, warrior to warrior. His grip is still strong. It's been a good life, you tell him. It's been a terrible life, he replies. But we survived it together. That's something. More men volunteer. Puduheba stays. Even Captain Muatoli stays. And you find yourself respecting him for the first time. Whatever softness he had is burned away by the reality of dying. He'll die a soldier. That's more than most manage. By evening you have your 500, men with scars and stories, men with nothing left to lose except their lives, and those they'll spend well. You look at them, your final command, and feel something you haven't felt in decades. Pride, not in empire or glory, or conquest, just simple pride in men who'll stand when standing is all that's left. Finally, you go home. The sun is setting, the last sunset you'll see, though you don't think of it that way. You only think I should tell Tawalia. She's packing. Of course she is. She knew before you told her. Wives of soldiers develop that sense, the ability to read death in their husband's walk, in how he holds his shoulders, in what he doesn't say. How long? She asks, without turning from her work. You leave at dawn. You go north, into the mountains. There are caves, supplies cached. You'll survive. That's not what I asked. Tomorrow, maybe the day after. Not long. She stops packing, turns, looks at you with those eyes that have seen you young and whole and hopeful. that have watched you age into scars and silence and standing watches that never end. I'm not going, she says. Yes, you are. I'm 50 years old. I've been married to you for 30 years. If you think I'm going to live without you after all this time, you're a fool. Tawalia, the children will go. The grandchildren, they have time ahead of them. I have time behind me. And whatever time is left, I spend it with you. You want to argue. You want to command, order, forbid. But she's not your soldier. She's your wife. And you've learned after 30 years that when Tawalia decides something, mountains move before she does. So you just nod. Tomorrow then. Tomorrow. She agrees. Your daughter comes in crying. You hold her. Tell her you love her. Tell her to be brave. Tell her all the lies parents tell children when the truth is too heavy to carry. Your grandson hugs your leg. You pick him up one last time, memorizing. Dawn. The evacuation begins before first light. You stand at the eastern gate, the opposite side from where the enemy camps, and watch 10,000 people stream out into the darkness. They carry what they can. Food, water, tools, children. Some lead donkeys or oxen. Some carry old relatives on their backs. They move in near silence, a ghost procession, leaving a ghost city. Your daughter passes with her family. She doesn't look at you. Can't. If she looks, she'll stop. If she stops, she won't leave. So she walks past, holding your grandson's hand, and you let her go without a word, because words would make it harder. The treasury goes out next. Bronze, gold, silver, the wealth of the empire loaded on carts and dragged into the mountains. The royal family goes with it. The king himself, no longer looking like a king, just an old man fleeing his burning house while it still stands. He stops near you. Thank you, he says. You salute. First time in years you've done it properly. May the gods protect you, my king. And you, he says, though both of you know the gods have already made their choice, and it wasn't to protect anyone. By mid-morning, the city is empty. Empty of life, empty of hope. Empty of everything except 500 men with swords and the certain knowledge of dying. You walk through silent streets, past the market where you've bought bread for 30 years, past the temple where you married Tawalia, past everything that was your life, now just stone and memory. Tawalia is waiting at the western gate. Your post, your final post. Ready, she asks. No, you say honestly, but let's do it anyway. She smiles. That's my soldier. They come at noon. No warning, no heralds, no declarations, just the steady tramp of 100,000 feet marching toward your walls. You're on the western wall with your 500. You've spread them thin, 20 men per section, trying to cover all approaches. It's not enough. It will never be enough. But you do it anyway, because doing something beats doing nothing. The enemy reaches the walls. You get your first clear look at them. They're not soldiers, not in any sense you understand. Some have armor, some don't. Some have bronze swords, some have stone axes, some have clubs. No uniform, no banners, no organization, just a mass of humanity that's decided to move through you rather than around you. What are they? Talmi asks. He stayed. Young, stupid, brave Talmi, who should have run but didn't. Desperate, you answer. Same as us. They don't bother with siege engines or tactics. They just swarm. Ladders hit the walls. Hundreds of them, thousands of them. Men scramble up. You knock them down. More come. You knock those down. More come. Your sword arm moves on instinct. Stab, slash, push, stab, slash, push. Bronze bites into flesh. Men scream. Men fall. You don't think about it. Thinking slows you. Slowing kills you. Beside you, Kamrusepa is laughing. Actually laughing. Like Syria, he shouts. Just like Syria. We won in Syria. You shout back. Did we? I forget. A ladder writes itself in front of you. A man's face appears over the parapet. Young face. Scared face. Same face as Talmi. Really, just on the other side of the wall. Your sword ends the similarity. The body falls backward, taking the ladder with it. More ladders, more faces, more falling. This is how you'll spend your last day, killing strangers who are killing you, for reasons neither of you truly understand. The first assault breaks. Not because you defeated them, they just pulled back, leaving hundreds of their dead at the wall's base. You look down and see the bodies piled like cordwood. Your 500 are now 430. 70 dead in 3 hours. The mathematics are simple and terrible. At this rate, you're gone by nightfall. Water, someone croaks. Puduheba, he's bleeding from a dozen cuts. Nothing fatal yet, but blood is blood, and eventually you run out. Tawalia appears with a water jug. She's been hauling supplies from the cisterns, along with the handful of other women who stayed. Too old to run, too stubborn to die quietly. She moves down the line, letting men drink. When she reaches you, she doesn't speak, just presses the jug to your lips. The water is warm and tastes like clay, and it's the best thing you've ever drunk. You should be in the palace, you tell her. Safest place. Safety is a lie, she replies. This is where you are. This is where I am. Before you can argue, the second assault begins. This time they've learned. This time they're more organized. This time they focus their attack on weak points, on sections where your defenders are thinnest. The eastern wall breaches first. You hear it, the sound of men shouting, steel on steel, then screaming. The screaming is cut short. That section is lost. Fall back, you shout. Western wall only. Abandon the others. Your 430 become 300 as you compress your defense. The enemy pours through the eastern gate into the city streets. But those streets are empty. No civilians to slaughter. No treasure to loot. Just empty buildings and the certain knowledge that the only thing worth taking here is the western gate, the exit, and you're standing in their way. Afternoon collapses into evening. The attacks never stop, just pause. Wave after wave crashes against your shrinking line. Your 300 become 200. Your 200 become 150. You've stopped counting kills, stopped thinking. Your body moves on pure instinct now, the muscle memory of 30 years of killing. Block, stab, slash, push. Block, stab, slash, push. The rhythm of survival, the dance of death. Kamrusapa falls. You see it happen. An arrow takes him in the throat. One of those random shots fired into the air by some unseen archer, falling like a gift from vengeful gods. He looks surprised, reaches for the shaft, then crumples. You keep fighting. No time to mourn. No time to think about Syria, about campaigns, about 30 years of friendship ending in a second. Just keep fighting. Taumi is still alive, somehow impossibly. The boy who couldn't stand watch for 2 hours is still fighting. He's covered in blood. His, theirs, everyone's. But he's still moving, still swinging, still alive. I learned, he shouts at you during a brief lull. I learned to think about nothing. You almost laugh. Would laugh if you had breath for it. Instead, you just nod. Good, you shout back. Keep learning. Stay alive. Yes, Commander, he won't. You both know it. But the fiction is important. The pretense that this might be survivable, that dawn might come, that any of this means something beyond buying hours for people already gone. The sun sets. The fighting continues by torchlight. The enemy has endless numbers. You have will. For now, will is enough. But you can feel it ending. Feel your strength fading. Feel the sword getting heavier. Feel your reactions slowing. How much longer? Midnight. Maybe. Time has lost meaning. You've been fighting for 12 hours. Your 150 are now 90. 90 men holding a wall section that should require 500. The enemy has changed tactics. They're not assaulting now. They're just waiting, surrounding. They've realized what you knew from the start. They don't need to storm the walls. They just need to wait for you to collapse from exhaustion. You sit on the stone, back against parapet, sword across your knees. Around you, your remaining men do the same. Nobody speaks. Too tired for words. Tawalia finds you. She's still alive, still moving, you don't know how. She sinks down beside you, and you feel her warmth against your side. The others made it, she says quietly. They had all day, they're miles away by now. In the mountains, safe. You don't know that. I know, they're safe. We did it. We bought them tomorrow. You lean your head against hers. 30 years of marriage, and this is where it ends. On a cold wall, surrounded by dead friends, waiting for death. I'm sorry, you tell her. For what? For this. For dying. For 30 years of being a soldier instead of a husband. You were always a soldier. I knew that when I married you. I married you anyway. She takes your scarred hand in hers. No regrets, Zidanza. We had a life. Not everyone gets that. Captain Muatali approaches. He's lost his helmet, lost his pompousness, lost everything except the sword still in his hand and the blood covering his armor. They're massing for a final assault, he reports. His voice is steady. He'll die a soldier after all. Dawn probably. Finish us when we're too exhausted to resist. You nod. Good. Let them come. We've held long enough. Your 90 men stand with you. Some can barely lift their swords. Some can barely stand. But they stand. The enemy masses. Not in formation. They still don't understand formation, but in overwhelming numbers. Thousands. Tens of thousands. A human tide waiting to sweep over the last 90 men standing between them and an empty city. Listen, you shout to your men. We held them a day and a night. The others are safe. We did what we came to do. We won. We're about to die. Someone shouts back. Yes, but we won first. Dying doesn't change that. A few laugh. A few weep. Most just ready their weapons. You've said what needed saying. The rest is just dying, and they know how to do that. The attack begins. Not a charge. A flood. They hit the wall like a wave hitting shore. And you are the shore, and the shore never wins. You fight. Of course you fight. That's what you do. Block, stab, slash, push, block, stab. Your sword breaks. 30 years of sharpening, and it finally breaks against some stranger's shield. You stare at the stub in your hand, almost surprised. Then you pick up a fallen spear, and keep fighting. Talmi goes down. Puduheba goes down. Captain Muatali goes down. The line collapses. You're being pushed back, overwhelmed, drowned in enemy bodies. Tawalia appears beside you. She has a knife, not a warrior's weapon, just a kitchen knife. She's carried her whole life. She stands with you because that's what she does. Together, she asks. Together, you confirm. And you fight. And you fight. And you fall. You don't die. Not yet. You wake in darkness. Pain everywhere. Can't move. Can't see. But you're breathing. Somehow, you're still breathing. Time passes. Minutes? Hours? You can't tell. Your body is broken, but your mind still works, still processes. You're lying in bodies. The wall, you fell from the wall, or were thrown, or collapsed. It doesn't matter. Above, you hear sounds, shouting, movement, the enemy inside the city, but distant, fading. They're moving through, moving on. You were right. They don't want the city. They just wanted it out of their way. Night comes. Or maybe it was always night. Your sense of time is gone. You try to move and discover your left arm doesn't work. Broken? Severed? Hard to tell in the dark. Doesn't matter. You won't need it. With your right arm, you drag yourself, inch by inch, away from the wall, away from the bodies. Toward what? You're not sure. Just away. You find Tawalia. She's cold. She's been cold for hours. You lie down beside her because where else would you lie? After 30 years you've earned the right to die beside your wife. We won, you tell her, though she can't hear. They're safe. Our daughter, our grandson, they're safe because of us. We won. The words echo in the empty city. Empty of life. Empty of empire. Empty of everything except you and the dead. And the slowly approaching silence. You close your eyes. We won, you whisper one more time. and the darkness comes, final and absolute and somehow peaceful. The Hittite Empire ends not with a battle but with an old soldier dying beside his wife, repeating a truth no one will ever record. We won. 3 days later, the city is silent, empty. The enemy has moved on, pushing north, leaving nothing but ghosts behind. In the mountains, your daughter stands with other survivors. Thousands of them huddled in caves, living off cached supplies and hope. Your grandson sits on her lap, asking where grandfather is. He's watching us, she tells him. It's the lie parents tell. But maybe not a lie. Maybe somewhere, somehow you are watching. Maybe the dead do that. The treasury was saved. The craftsmen survived. The knowledge, the stories, the skills that made the Hittite Empire great. These escaped, scattered now, dissolving into other peoples, other kingdoms, but alive. The empire is dead, but the people live. Isn't that what empires are? Not walls or thrones or crowns, but people. The knowledge in a potter's hands. The songs a mother sings. The stories a grandfather tells. Your grandson will grow up in a different world. He'll learn different stories, speak different languages. But somewhere in him, in his children, in their children, a fragment of you continues. A fragment of Tawalia, a fragment of every person who stood on that wall. History will barely notice. The scribes who survived will write, the Hittite Empire fell, cause unknown. Future scholars will puzzle over the sudden collapse. How did such a powerful empire vanish overnight? They'll ask. The answer is simple. It didn't vanish. It just changed. Transformed from empire into diaspora, from power into memory, from walls into wandering. 500 men died buying time for 10,000 to escape. The mathematics say they lost, but mathematics don't understand sacrifice. They won. You won. The empire ended, but the people survived. That's victory enough. Decades pass. Your grandson grows into a man. He remembers almost nothing of Hattusa, just fragments, images that might be memories or might be stories his mother told so often they became memories. He remembers a gate, tall, impossibly tall through child's eyes. He remembers a man with scars picking him up. He remembers feeling safe. That's all. That's enough. He becomes a merchant, travels the trade routes his grandfather once guarded. In Egypt, he meets other Hittite survivors. They share stories, compare what they remember, piece together the collapse from fragments. My father held the gates. One woman says, bought time for us to escape. Mine too, says another. Western Wall, fought to the last. Your grandson listens and realizes they're all talking about the same day, the same 500 men, the same sacrifice. My grandfather, he says slowly. His name was Zidanza. He was a palace guard. Zidanza. The woman interrupts. Her eyes widen. Zidanza, who trained my father. Zidanza, the gate commander. You knew him. Everyone knew him. Everyone who escaped. The 500 who stayed. They're why any of us lived. They're why we're having this conversation. For the first time your grandson understands. Not just that his grandfather died. But why. But what it bought. But what it meant. He returns home to his mother. She's old now, her hair white, her hands gnarled from decades of weaving. But when he tells her what he learned, her eyes fill with tears. He won, she whispers. He told me he would. He won. And in that moment, across decades and death, a message delivers. We held. We bought tomorrow. We won. A century passes. 2, 3. The Hittite Empire becomes history. Then legend, then nothing. A name in crumbling tablets, a mystery for future archaeologists. But in villages across Anatolia, in trading posts throughout the Mediterranean, in families who can't quite remember where they came from, fragments persist, a way of making pottery, a word in a forgotten language, a story about grandmothers who survived something terrible. Tell me about the old days. A child asks her grandmother somewhere in Syria, 300 years after you died. My grandmother's grandmother, the old woman says, came from a great city in the north. It fell in a single night, but some survived. We survived. Why did it fall? Nobody knows. The world changed. New peoples came. The old ways ended, but we adapted. We survived. It's not your story anymore. The details are lost. Your name forgotten. Tuwalia's name forgotten. The 500 reduced to some survived, but the essential truth remains. Faced with extinction, some stood, some fought, some died, so others could live. That's the story that persists. That's the story worth remembering. Archaeologists will eventually find Hattusa, will excavate its ruins, will catalog its pottery, translate its tablets, reconstruct its temples. They'll puzzle over its collapse, write papers, develop theories. Invasion, some will say, climate change, others will argue, economic collapse, systemic failure, multiple factors. They'll all be right, they'll all be wrong, because empires don't fall from single causes. They fall when the pressure becomes too great, when the seams split, when the weight of history becomes unbearable. But people don't fall. They adapt, they survive, they become the next thing. That's what you bought, not imperial continuity, just human continuity, just tomorrow. In the 21st century, a graduate student sits in a library, reading about Bronze Age collapse. She's writing her dissertation on the Hittite Empire's sudden disappearance. She finds a tablet fragment, badly damaged, most of it illegible. But 3 lines are clear. The gates held, bought time for the others, we won. It's nothing. A fragment. Could mean anything. Probably administrative. Probably mundane. She almost files it away, but something makes her pause. Those 3 lines. The gates held, we won. She imagines a city under siege. Imagines soldiers on walls. Imagines a choice. Stand and die, or run and live. Imagines men choosing to stand. Of course, she has no proof. The fragment is too damaged. The context is lost. Any conclusion would be speculation, academic suicide. So she files it away, writes her dissertation about economic factors and climate change and systemic collapse, gets her degree, becomes a professor. The fragment gathers dust in a museum basement. But sometimes, late at night, she thinks about those 3 lines, wonders who wrote them, wonders what they meant, wonders if somewhere, in the final days of a dying empire, someone stood and fought and died, and considered it winning. She'll never know. The past doesn't give up its secrets easily. But you know, Tuwalia knows, Kamrusepa knows, the 500 know, and somewhere, in the genetic memory of every person descended from those 10,000 survivors, the knowledge persists. Once when it mattered most, people stood, people fought, people died, so others could live. That's not history, that's eternity. But let's return to that wall, to that final moment. To you, you're lying in darkness, dying slowly. Your last thoughts are not of empire or glory or great historical events. You're thinking about your grandson's laugh, the way Tuwalia's hands never stopped moving, the weight of a good sword, the taste of barley bread, small things, human things, the things that actually matter when everything else falls away. You think about Kamrusepa joking about Syria, about Puduheba wheezing when he laughed, about Tommy learning to think about nothing, about Captain Muwatali finding his courage at the very end. You think about the thousands walking north into the mountains, your daughter holding your grandson's hand, the treasury being dragged to safety, the craftsmen who'll teach their skills in foreign lands, the stories that will survive even if the storytellers don't. Did you save the empire? No, empires don't save. They're too big, too impersonal, too much weight in history and stone. But you saved people, 10,000 people, maybe more. And those people will have children, and those children will have children, and somewhere in that endless chain, the universe continues in a way it wouldn't have if you'd run. That's not small, that's everything. Your breathing slows, the darkness deepens. Soon, very soon, there will be nothing. No you, no pain, no memory, just the eternal quiet of death. But before that happens, you smile, actually smile, because you kept your promise. You stood watch. You held the gate. You did your job. And somewhere in the distant darkness you hear Tawalia's voice. That's my soldier. Then nothing. Then peace. Then the long sleep from which no soldier wakes. The sun rises on an empty city. Hattusa, capital of the Hittite Empire for 5 centuries, sits silent. No morning markets. No priests chanting. No children playing. Just empty streets and empty buildings and the empty echo of what was. The 500 lie where they fell. No one will bury them. No one will build monuments. No one will remember their names. But they held. For a day and a night, 500 held against 100,000. And when they fell, 10,000 lived. The mathematics of war say they lost. The mathematics of sacrifice say they won. Both are true. Wind blows through empty streets. Doors creak. Shutters bang. The city begins its long transformation from living capital to archaeological site. In 1,000 years, tourists will walk these streets, taking photographs, reading plaques, learning that the Hittite Empire collapsed suddenly for unknown reasons. The reasons are known. The reasons lie here, in scattered armor and broken swords, and 500 bodies that bought tomorrow. But history doesn't record reasons like that. History records dates and kings and treaties, not individual choices, not personal sacrifices, not the moment a soldier decides dying matters less than what his dying buys. That's the tragedy of history. It remembers empires but forgets the people who built them. Remembers kings but forgets the guards who protected them. Remembers collapses but forgets the stand that made collapse survivable. Your name will be lost. Your story will be lost. Even this city will eventually be lost, buried under centuries of dirt and forgetting. But what you did echoes, through your grandson, through his children, through every person descended from those who escaped. You changed the future by choosing to have none. Years later, not many, maybe 5, a traveler passes through the ruins. He's a merchant, looking for shortcuts through the mountains. He finds the city and stops. Curious, he walks through empty streets, sees skeletons in armor, wonders what happened here. He knows the old stories. The Hittite Empire collapsed, suddenly and completely. But seeing it is different from hearing about it. He finds a skeleton on the western wall, bronze armor, mostly intact. Beside it, another skeleton, smaller, wearing no armor. In the smaller skeleton's hand, a kitchen knife. The merchant stares for a long time. He doesn't know your name, doesn't know your story, but he can read the evidence. 2 people died together, one protecting, one accompanying. He says a prayer, not to Hittite gods. Those are forgotten now, but to whatever gods might listen when travelers pray for dead strangers. Then he leaves, goes back to his route. In the next town, someone asks if he found any shortcuts. No, he says, just ruins and ghosts. And that's the story. The story nobody wrote down. The story that became silence. The story of how the Hittite Empire collapsed overnight and why nobody recorded it. Because the people who could have written it down were running for their lives. The scribes were carrying treasury tablets north instead of recording history. The priests were leading refugees instead of making chronicles. The soldiers who witnessed everything were lying dead on walls. The empire fell into a gap, that space between the last person who remembered and the first person who recorded. It fell into the silence where all unwritten things go. But you can still hear it if you listen carefully. In the wind that blows through Hattusa's ruins, in the stones that once were walls, in the genetic memory of every person whose ancestors walked north from a burning world into an uncertain future. You can hear 500 men standing, holding, buying time, winning by losing. You're safe now, here in your bed, in your time, in your world, where empires rise and fall but rarely take everything with them. You're safe because people you'll never know stood in places you'll never see and decided tomorrow mattered more than today. That's the gift history gives us, not grand stories, not heroes, Just ordinary people doing extraordinary things because someone had to, and they were there. So sleep now, sleep well, the watch is kept, the gates are held. Morning will come because someone, somewhere, always stands through the night. And maybe in your dreams, you'll walk through an ancient city at sunset, and you'll see an old soldier standing watch, and he'll nod at you, one human to another, across the gulf of time. Because some things don't die, some things echo forever. So there it is, the empire that vanished, the soldiers nobody remembered, the sacrifice nobody recorded. But you know now, you carry their story forward, just by listening. Tomorrow, when you see ruins or read about collapsed civilizations, remember behind every silent stone were people like you, making impossible choices, standing when running made more sense, buying futures they'd never see. History forgets, but we remember. Sweet dreams. The watch continues. Dawn always comes. If you enjoyed this journey through forgotten history, leave a comment about which lost civilization you'd like to explore next. Where are you watching from? What time is it there? Let me know. And remember, subscribe for more stories from the edges of memory, where history becomes legend, becomes dream. Sleep well, time traveler.